Product managers make the mistake of thinking, if I build it, they will come. Well, even great products don't sell themselves. So in this video, we're going to uncover 6 great go-to-market tactics that are going to 10x your growth. We'll also talk about the pre-understand work you'll need to do to choose which tactic to go with. And thirdly, we'll talk about how you'll prioritize amongst these tactics for your specific product. So let's start with tactic number 1, which is content creation. So a great example of a company that does this really well is HubSpot. HubSpot is a, let's say, social media tool company. HubSpot is a great product for small, medium businesses and even larger businesses to manage their social media, email marketing, etc. And they've done a really good job in becoming a leader, a authoritative figure in this space. Basically, when you search for social media stats, or you search for recommendations and advice on how to craft social media strategies, HubSpot will always be at the very top with a listing of their blog articles. And within their blog articles, you'll see native advertising. They'll include recommendations on using their own products in what they recommend. But most of the blog is written as neutral content, educating their customers on topics they care about. So what is this tactic? It's basically producing educational content on topics that your users find interesting, have questions around. The channels that content creators would use are, if they're writing blogs, they could use WordPress, or even basically what I'm doing, creating YouTube long-form content, or they can use short-form content like TikTok, other social media tools like Facebook, and even communities like posting on Reddit or Quora. And of course, the other social media site, Twitter, has been key in helping companies and products, especially startups, get early traction. So which channel you choose really depends on where your customer's at. And that we'll talk a little bit more in the second part of the video. So some pros to this approach is that whatever content you're creating is easily searchable. So it keeps doing work for you. Another pro of this approach is that you establish trust and credibility in this space, so that when customers are ready to buy, they think of you and your brand. A con to this approach is that it's pretty tedious to regularly produce content or even to produce a long guide of a content. But the ROI from this can be pretty significant. For example, even for me, this type of content is where most of my clients find me. By the way, for these tactics that we're talking about, it's really important to know how to measure success off of them. But that is the trickiest part for go-to-market strategies. So if you're interested in a video on this, comment below and let me know what questions you might have. Second tactic we'll talk about is community building. A great example of this, especially early on in the Yelp days. Yelp built a community of foodies that would come together and basically hang out and talk about their favorite spots. Now a lot of that community is online. You see with elite Yelpers who will comment on restaurants they've been to that they love. And these people kind of know each other in the community and will share tips. So what this tactic is that you're building online or offline communities, basically in person, that foster community building amongst customers and serves as a good relationship to build with customers. Some channels for this for online community building I've seen are in Discord, Facebook groups, Slack channels, Reddit threads. And if you want in-person events, using tools like Eventbrite to bring people together is a great way to have people physically meet. Some pros to this approach, it definitely builds a lot of positive brand. Think about it. Bringing people together makes people feel connected to each other, and hence you as a brand that promotes that will have a lot of positive sentiments from the customers. A second pro is this is a great way to sell early. Sometimes these people in the community won't necessarily be customers immediately, but this gives you a pool of people to identify customers early on that could be potential customers that you can make into customers and build that relationship with them early on so that they think of your brand when they're ready to buy. The biggest negative for community building is that it's just hard to manage a community, especially with some of the malicious things that go on the internet. Building and keeping a community healthy is a large feat. There might be risks on the relationships you have with your customers here, and there might also be a high expectations from customers for your company to respond. Tactic number 3 is product-led growth. What does that mean? Well, a great example of this is what PayPal did early on in its years in order to get to the tremendous growth that they saw. So what PayPal did was give, what was it, $10 to the person that was referring, and I believe to the person that was being referred. I know Airbnb did a similar thing when I became a host. It gave the person that referred a couple of $100 and the host, also a couple $100 in earnings. Another take on product-led growth is companies like LegalZoom. So they help with incorporating businesses, whether it's a small, medium businesses or a startup. And what they provide are free tools to help you start your business. So there's a tool called the Name Checker. Just think about it. When you start your business, you have to name it something. And sometimes you don't know if that name is already taken. So they provide this space where you can type in names that you're interested in and see if it's available. So what this tactic is building products that will automate growth. Some examples are referral systems that we talked about. Others are free tools like the LegalZoom one I mentioned. And yet others could be quite easy, simple email marketing campaigns where you follow up with people automatically after they've engaged with your product. The pros of this tactic is that it's automated. So basically the return on investment can be pretty high since you're building this tool once. Of course, you have to maintain it, but it then starts to take off on its own. But if it works, it really works. I mean, for example, for PayPal, the majority of its customers came from the referral system approach. The con or negative on the other side could be, depending on how difficult the feature is to build, there could be high engineering costs. Tactic number 4 is to leverage the power of influencer. Nowadays, we're always hearing about influencer marketing because this has become the advent of influencers and content creators, etc. Some great examples of these are companies like Squarespace and Skillshare, which both work with influencers to promote their product. I mean, how many videos have you seen? This is sponsored by Skillshare. I'm waiting for my own Skillshare sponsorship, but I definitely have not gotten that big yet. So what this tactic is basically choosing influencers that resonate with your customers who already have your customers' trust. Now, this is not a new tactic. This has been used for as long as marketing has existed. Think about these celebrities who are on TV commercials telling you about products that you should buy. It's just now influencer marketing is closer to influencers that might not have a huge following, and instead they have a trusted niche following. Some channels for this are YouTube mentions, or on IG, people are promoting products. Basically, any social media platform that have content creators can serve as a channel for influencer marketing. A pro tip here is to really understand the prices of how much promotion on these different platforms will cost, and that could be a good way to then prioritize which one you decide to select. And not only should it be platform dependent, but also which influencer you're choosing. Of course, those influencers with more following will be more expensive, but might be more effective. It depends. Then there's a strategy with targeting micro-influencers, which are smaller influencers who have very deep trust with their community, and that could be another good way to go. Some pros of this approach are that you're getting influencers who have a deep trust with their customers already, and trust isn't necessarily something that you can buy. The cons of this approach, or the negatives, is it can take a lot to be working with an influencer, collaborating with them. I've done a project once where I was working with a slew of influencers to promote our product, and each influencer had their own style of working, their own timelines. So getting a company to work in the middle to manage that for you is a worthy middle person to invest in. And nowadays, there's a ton of platforms that help you discover influencers that exist, and these have served as agencies to then help people manage this project end to end for companies that are interested in doing influencer marketing. Tactic number 5 is sales. So you think about big companies like Google, they have a humongous sales team that are basically talking to customers, new customers, and existing customers to build relationships with them. And this is one of the oldest ways of sales, building relationships to sell things to people. Think about back then, there were people knocking on doors, walking from door to door, household to sell them goods. Or the cold calls people we used to do, calling homes to sell them things like books, telephones, you name it. I'm so glad we're not in those days anymore where people sell like that. I mean, would you rather receive an ad on Facebook or receive calls on your telephone about things that you don't need? So what this tactic is, basically salespeople who are then pitching products to users whether it's new products or upselling existing users' products. So some examples of this are cold calling over the phone, which yes, still exists. Especially I feel old people are getting calls. A lot of these are scam calls selling them things, which is totally unethical, by the way. Other ways of people doing cold reach outs nowadays towards businesses are over LinkedIn. So they'll send LinkedIn messages. Warm leads, people will make intros to people they know that are trying to buy something. So the pro of this approach is what we talked about, which is relationship building. When you build relationships, people are more likely to buy from you. One, because you understand what they want. So you know to pitch them the right things, what are their pain points. And at the same time, because you're building that relationship, people sometimes feel a bit indebted to you and more of an inkling to buy from you if you develop a good relationship with them. Another pro of this is this helps you build your product. The closer you are with your customers, the more you understand what they need. So this is a great way to also do research on top of selling something, because some of the best ideas for what you should build will come from your customers and have them directly tell you what they need. Some cons to this approach, of course, it's quite expensive to get salespeople to pitch products, and hence that's why salespeople make so much money. And the last tactic is paid ads, which everyone is aware of. So for example, if you've ever seen Grammarly ads on YouTube, that's paid for, or Facebook ads, Google search ads, all of these things are pay to play. So what this tactic is paying platforms to show advertisements of your product. And some channels, of course, the most well-known ones are Google search, Facebook ads, a lot of news websites such as New York Times and Forbes will show it. Basically sites that have a ton of eyeballs. The pros of this approach are that it's pretty predictable. You pay to play, which means if you pay something, your ad will show up to some number of people. So companies feel really good about this because it doesn't have to depend on merit. The cons of this approach is that it's pay to play, which means your growth could have to linearly grow with the amount of dollars that you put in. So once you stop putting in dollars, your product doesn't have as much visibility, which is not great if it's the only engine you're dependent on. Now we've covered the 6 go-to-market tactics. We're going to talk about some understand work you need to do before deciding which tactics are best for your product. So before you choose which go-to-market tactics to go with, you must do these things to understand your company's positioning and also your customers. So the first is, who are your target customers? And here you would segment who are and aren't your target customers. And then you would prioritize which customers based on, say, return on investment. And here it might not need to be demographic-based segmentation, such as mothers who are 35 versus men who are balding. But rather, they could be behavioral characteristic segmentations. For example, people who are in need of financial help. The second thing you have to get very clear on, so once you've established who to target, you then have to understand, where do they hang out? Where are these people spending their time? Because that's where you want to show up and catch them. And thirdly, you want to understand, for these customers, what are their pain points? And these top pain points can help you then set the narrative on how to capture your customers' attention and what resonates with them when you're trying to sell them. How do you even go about prioritizing? You can't try to do everything at once. So here, the key principle is looking at return on investment, which is the foundational principle of cost versus benefit. Well, how do you measure return on investment? Well, let's start off with some metrics such as impressions, clicks, sales. Then you'll want to measure the cost side. How much is cost per 1,000 impression cost, or cost per click? And if you don't have exact numbers, it's totally okay to estimate. So for example, I might compare what is the cost of a paid ad versus someone seeing something in a community. And the last thing I would measure is ease and speed. So is it high effort or low effort to get this off the ground? So for example, paid ads might be medium execution effort, where I might have to hire an agency and I have to come up with creators. Versus something like community building can be a bit more complex to get off the ground and turn into results. So the ease and speed to seeing results might be high. You can end up choosing the wrong tactic if you don't have a comprehensive go-to-market strategy. So look at this video where we talk about the 5 steps to creating a go-to-market strategy. And I will see you guys in the next video.